and I knew I had made it. But I got to the end, I thought, shit, did I make it? Or did I pretend to make it in rejecting who I was as I was going for it? And so I said something to a friend of mine who's a New York Times bestselling author. And if I come in, I'm pretty rough around the edges. Is that okay? I just wanted to check. I said, I'm a bit rough, but I'm from New Zealand, but we're a bit rough around the edges. He said to me, no, that's not okay. That then was a light bulb. That everything that I had done was to try and fit into this idea of perfection, betterment, be your best self. And then about a year after that, I got depressed and was suicidal in bed.
You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, your partner, and your world. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is simple: to help you navigate life with more clarity, more confidence, and purpose-driven action, with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and some loving straight talk. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I am your host, Mike Campbell, and today I am bringing you another guest, Mr. Henare O'Brien, a fellow Kiwi, a Māori, part English, a little bit Irish, as you'll hear in the discussion, and a term that I absolutely loved that he shares in this conversation as he admits to and claims and simply owns, really, and that is a bit rough around the edges. Now, this was an interesting conversation. I have looked forward to connecting and chatting with Henare for some time. I've watched his work and admired him from afar in the least creepiest way I can to say that. And he is someone who I've seen in the personal development world, and someone who I've seen have, just wonderful insights and practical knowledge and information, and that's kind of what we really explored today. In part was his approach now, I think, has become this very practical. We're going to sit here and talk about all of your shit all day, or we're going to get on and do some stuff, and then when your shit pops up, we can explore what needs to happen then and there, instead of kind of sitting and masturbating in a bunch of stuff. And so with that in mind, one of the things that I tend to do in part and work with in men, I'm very much about pragmatic action. If I'm going to learn something, if there's going to be an awareness, if I'm going to consume a piece of information, have an insight, what am I going to do with it, right? But at the same time, I believe that we have to really explore and make sense of things. If things are blocking you, then we're going to get past them, and often that means understanding it to a point so we can then implement new actions. But I felt challenged, I'll be honest, in this conversation with Henare. And, we spoke about some of his ideas around masculinity and what men perhaps not necessarily need to do. That was kind of the point. He was kind of saying, I don't want to tell men what to do. I'm going to live. And if men watch me and want to ask me and kind of learn from me in that way, then that's kind of how it goes about. And we start to explore Henare's take on the personal development world, and how, for someone who has been in the inner circles, the upper echelons, whatever you want to use, he's kind of seen, I suppose the theme was a lack of integrity in there, and that was something really interesting in what we explored. And so his work with himself and his wife and his family, very much now is about supporting people in taking pragmatic action and improving their lives and building their businesses more specifically. So I trust that you'll get something from this conversation, and I do, know very much so that one of Henare's ideas and desires really with these kinds of conversations is not just to have a conversation and here's some stuff and this is nice, but to actually get people curious and get them asking questions. If you disagree with something, that's beautiful, because you get to question it and you get to explore it and maybe have a discussion, and that might open up some more ideas. And it has for me beyond this conversation. So I'm going to leave this with you. If you've got some requests, some questions, some curiosities that pop out of it, then let us know. As always, wherever you get your podcast, please make sure to click subscribe, see first, download, all that kind of stuff. If you want to get into some more pragmatic work if you have reached a ceiling in your life, there's something that you can't get past, and you realize, shit, maybe I haven't got the tools for this, then that's the time to reach out and get some support, build some awareness, put that shit into pragmatic action, and create change across time. That's the work that I do. We've got plenty of offerings, so let us know if you want some support to step to that next level of your life. Otherwise, if you want to find out more about Henare, then you'll find it in the show notes. We'll put everywhere you can find him. Instagram, he's got a great podcast of his own. Otherwise, on with the show with Mr. Henare O'Brien. All right. Henare O'Brien, welcome to the Everyday Legends podcast. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Nice to be on it, brother.
Thank you for being here. Now, I have, watched you from afar. It's always a weird term, isn't it? But it's kind of true through the internet, and really appreciate a lot of what I've seen and how you show up and the work you do and so on. And I suspect that some of my followers might know of you, but perhaps many might not. So I want to start with a bit of an introduction, and a question I like to ask on the show, and please, you can take this wherever you want, is this. Who is Henare O'Brien?
That's a tough question. It's got so much ambiguity in it. I could answer it all sorts of ways, but I'll start. Henare. I'll do it. Henare O'Brien is a father of two beautiful children, been married to a wife for 18 years, who was brought up in the suburb of Flaxmere in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand. I'm half Irish with a bit of English, and there's a bit of Chinese in there too, and half Māori. And we live in Bali now for the last 7 years with our kids. Oh, one's just left. She's 19, going back home. That's probably the best answer I can give at the moment.
Nice. And what would, as you said, I could go many ways. What would be one of the other ways you could take that answer?
Well, it's a question that's filled with ambiguity. So I could fill it with anything that I wanted to, right? Who am I? It could be an indispensable, infinite being from the planet Xenon, I don't know, or an everlasting spiritual entity traveling through the infinite paradigms of space. I don't know. But what's really, what's always hit home to me is the ordinariness of, or the wonderfulness of being the thing that I am born into, which is Māori, Irish, from New Zealand, two lovely parents, brothers, sisters, family man, business, work. I'll try and stay. That seems to be practically the easiest way to answer that question again.
Nice. Thank you for that. And what I'm starting to hear in that is something I have heard you talk about, which is culture. Starting to look at answering the question of who am I, or at least starting to kind of connect to like my identity, especially if maybe the context is that's what I'm searching for, right? Yeah, so first of all, let's come back to the culture.
Yeah, so there's a story that clicks when you talk about that. Ram Dass, who was a spiritual teacher, he died about a year ago. He's probably known as one of the greatest spiritual teachers currently when he was alive on the planet. He went to see a chief, and they were talking, and he was frustrated at the chief that the chief couldn't give up his culture, because in the spiritual realm we are beyond everything. But he realized that the chief had something precious, the preciousness that he held to his birth and how he was brought up, gave him a real physical, practical element to his life. And Ram Dass, he said he later on he got it, because we don't, until we die apparently, we don't live in that realm. We live here between space, time, energy, and matter. So those are the things that matter first.
Right. Nice. And so for you, how does your approach then come into the importance of culture for an individual, connecting back into that? I know for me, like I've come back into New Zealand, right? It's where I'm from. I'm from the South Island all around, Timaru being kind of the last place.
I was born in Dunedin, so we're not too far off.
Very nice. Spent many years down there at university. And, now I'm in the Hawke's Bay, and I'm married to my wife who's half Māori. And, I now have a daughter who obviously that's part of her heritage, and it's something I'm very drawn to connect to. But, I also almost have this internal kind of conflict, I suppose, of like, there's this culture that I see as New Zealand culture. There's this culture that's Māori culture that I feel connected to, but it's not my heritage, but now it's my daughter's. I'm interested to get, as you said, there's this Irish, English, and Māori, a little bit of Chinese in there for you as well.
So what was your question?
For you, what is the importance of the connection back to culture? How does that play out?
It helps me know who I am. It gives me I've noticed when you look at cultures across the world, cultures that have been dominated by usually the dominant culture, which we would say is the white culture, doesn't really have a grasp of who they are because they're not connected back to where they're from. If you look at Aboriginal, Māori, there's a deep connection. And just like any jealous sibling who has got a gift, you want to dominate or control that. So I think when you've got something special, like where you're from, 50,000 years as an Aboriginal, 1,000 years as Māori coming from Hawaii, or the African coming over to America, you have a real sense of and groundedness in where you're from. When that seems to be something special, obviously the other sibling wants to feel special too, so it comes across and tries to take away whatever that special. It's like in human nature. You see it with kids, and you see it, with adults. Culture is special because it grounds us to the practicality of where we actually come from. When a person doesn't really know where they're from, they can become real wobbly in where they're going and what they should do. That's my opinion. And just watching cultures around the world, the most dominant culture obviously is the European Anglo-Saxon culture. But a lot of them, when you speak to people they don't know where they are. Like a lady said to me once, "Man, you got a wonderful culture, Māori, you're connected." I said, "Where are you from?" She said, I'm from Surrey or whatever. And I said, "Man, the English is a rich, deep, long culture." And she didn't even understand that. I said, if you look at, where do you live? She says, "I live in a 1,000-year-old cobblestone house." I said, 1,000 years. I think it's when that's lost, a person becomes floaty. They're not able to anchor to something practical. You see a lot of people go into spirituality, usually Anglo-Saxon white people, because they don't have an anchor to who they are and where they're from, or they haven't learned about that.
So almost they're looking for the spirituality thing out there to ground them kind of in here, whereas in there is where it is, or at least in the roots of the culture. Yeah,
well, I don't know where I heard this, but when people talk about spirituality to me, I said I heard this, but I put in my own words. My own words is, there's nothing more spiritual than being born through your mother at the specific time, place, and with the heritage that you'll come into. That is unfathomable and beyond anything that you could ever understand. So why isn't that special right from there? You were born through your mother at a certain place in time and history with a certain culture attached to that and a certain genetic code and lineage to it. That's got to be something special. So if that's something special, because it's practical, then people have something to ground and hold themselves to. The most wonderful people I've met are people that are grounded to something in that way.
Yeah, I love that. So can you take us through, for you, if you're sat down, let's say, with someone who, regardless of who they are, but they might have come from that, as you said, white, kind of not really connected to any kind of culture. It's just white, which doesn't even separate into, as you say, like yourself, it's, for me, there's Scottish culture and heritage, something I'm fascinated by, and my Irish ancestry and so on. They're looking for this spirituality, and the idea that I'm hearing from you is, well, let's connect back into your culture and your heritage. So where do you start with that?
Well, you go back and you go talk to people in your family, or you go look back in history books, or you look at a documentary about where the Irish come from. The O'Briens are 1,000 years old. Halfway through it, when they were persecuted, they try to take the O from the Brian. So there's a history there. The Māori I come from Waikato, which is the Kingitanga movement. My family are buried on Taupiri Mountain, and that goes back 1,000 years. They're the last of the Māori people to defend their area against the colonial rule. And yet, yet on the other side, in the colonial rule, I had a few English relatives, trying to find their bit of land. in New Zealand and doing the thing that they needed to do to try to find their bit of land.
And you start.
So, just finding out the histories and stories, it brings a richness back to a person's life. Right? If you can get more specific, it's special.
Mm. And so then, can you take us through your experience, and maybe that's it, so we can move on if that's the case. But how does that then allow you to, as you say, ground and then look forward into the world?
Well, it doesn't. I'm just bringing a theoretical conversation to you.
Right. Okay.
So nothing of what I say will make a difference to anybody. It's just an idea that I'm bringing that can potentially help listeners out there. Every theory that I bring in my conversation to you or the people listening is just an idea. It's not even, that's not, it's my idea of how I found connected to culture. Now, is it true? No, it's probably not true fully for people out there. But for me, I found that when I'm the most me, I'm connected to what I've come into in my life. Growing up in Flaxmere, low socioeconomic, poor at times, violence, also wonderful times, running through orchards, eating apples, swimming in rivers, watching rugby, going to play touch cricket on a Saturday morning at 8:30, the Christmas, all of that wonderful, cool stuff. But for me personally, we seem to, as humans, reject the thing that we should love first, which is the things that make us who we are. And spirituality and personal development seems to be the catalyst for trying to tell us we should be something other than what we are. What is the main mantra of personal development? Like, be a better person. Well, how about I accept the person that I am before I try to be better than that? It really, it so fucking perturbs me, because a lot of people in the industry are worse off than a normal human being, because they're trying to project images out there of their smiles and wonderful lives. It's not true, because I know that's not true. I've interviewed 300 of them. We ran the world's biggest personal development summit, and some of these people are more fucked up than the average person. Yeah, they're best-selling authors because they're trying to hold together that you can have a life like mine, but they're not showing the full part of their life. Or, they're not showing people the truth of it.
And so I'm sure there's some interesting stories in that. And what I'm, for the listeners, there was a look on Henare's face there. What I'm also hearing in that is, the idea of betterment is in part saying goodbye, like leave those other parts behind and step into what's better. Is that kind of what you're speaking to? Yes,
because people usually, from my being in 20 years in personal, no, 15, 17 years, we come into personal development and we have this wonderful experience of connectedness or whatever it is, a seminar. And then on some level, we say to ourselves, oh, maybe I can get rid of the things that I don't like in myself. And then we go to work and trying to have that happen. But if you look at some of these people really closely, as they're smiling, it looks like the Joker's smile, because they're hiding more than they're showing. And so me and Kate were lucky enough to create a personal development business, and that's exactly what I did. I thought I could be better than culture, better than Flaxmere, better than I could outdo it. And I did it. We created an amazing business. We were invited into the Transformational Leadership Council with the teachers of The Secret, and Jack Canfield said to me personally, we would love you and Kate in there. And I knew I'd made it. But I got to the end, I thought, shit, did I make it? Or did I pretend to make it, and rejecting who I was as I was going for it? And so I said something to a friend of mine who's a New York Times bestselling author, and I said, look, if I come into this council, you've voted me in, five people had to vote us in, and we had 5 New York Times bestselling authors vote us in. Wonderful people, lovely. And I said to one of them, if I come in, I'm pretty rough around the edges. Is that okay? I just wanted to check. I said, I'm a bit rough, but I'm from New Zealand, but we're a bit rough around the edges. He said to me, no, that's not okay. That then was a light bulb, that everything that I had done was to try and fit into this idea of perfection, betterment, be your best self. And then about a year after that, I got depressed and was suicidal in bed for 3 months. Couldn't walk, I'd climb out of bed, because my whole world had been shattered, because I had to go back. I had to go back to recognize what I had tried to throw away.
Mm.
And then going back, that oscillation, or that going back, had all of my ideas about where I was going crumble, and that sent me into this depression for 3 months. And it was fine. The depression, I was actually happy that I got depressed, because I would be a rich, stage-wearing asshole right now if I hadn't done that. I would have literally been on stages, which we still do, talking to people, thinking I was the best, advising them on how to live a great life, or having 3 mistresses, and, you know, smoking weed at the back of the stage or something like that.
Mm. And so, the vision that's coming to my head is a pendulum, right? Like there was this swing over here, and then kind of the swing back. And obviously, one of the things that when you're on one end of the pendulum is you can also see like the other side coming back into that depression. Sounds heavy. You're right.
How do you have an up without a down? A left without a right, a back without a front, a night without a day, a you without a me. We live in a world of polarity. Even though we go, oh no, well, you can't have a moon without a sun. It doesn't happen that way. So you can't have certain elements of our life we're wanting to have and certain elements we're not wanting to have. They both have to happen.
So does that mean then, you know, when you were on the cusp of this council and you said, you know,
Transformational Leadership Council.
Sorry?
Transformation. Sounds flash, right? Sounds like, oh, you got a Lamborghini. It's like Transformational Leadership Council.
Does that mean that getting to that point there, because I'm hearing in that story almost a bit of like self-abandonment, as you said, like trying to, you know, get away from some parts. But does that imply that getting to that point, and you said, hey, I'm a bit rough around the edges, and they said that's not okay, that rough around the edges had been hidden?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
that was almost you outing yourself.
Yeah. And then it started a pendulum in my mind of something's missing. Something's missing from me that I can't accept. They can't accept me being rough around the edges. And so that started like a ball rolling in my mind backwards. And as the ball was rolling backwards, I was starting to regress back to that person, because trying to hold, like you say, the pendulum one side and not let it swing with so much energy that when it did start to fall the other way, it started to go really fast. And then the pendulum swung right back, and it was like, okay, you're depressed. You can't motivate yourself. All the NLP, all the ontology, epistemology, axiology, everything you've studied, the $1 million you've spent on personal development, traveling the world with Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Brendan Bouchard, Tony Robbins, all of that's gone. So who are you now? And I was a Netflix, porn, McDonald's eating motherfucker. That's what happened. That's what happened. And then I was like, and I was actually happy. In the depression, there was a sense of peace, because I was happy that I got there. And then the suicidal thoughts came, and I said, okay, ooh, the black dog's here. But we cried together because it was necessary. The wonderful thing that happened was, as my energy went down, my children and wife's energy came up. So they started, because I dropped my energy all the way down, their energy came up, and I saw them really start to shine. And I thought, ooh, this inspirational teacher, look at him now when he's not inspirational. People will actually start to be who they are. And so it was like, oh, it's all this epiphany stuff, you know.
Beautiful. But also what I'm hearing there now, you know, from the pendulum left to right, I'm also coming to this idea, and I've heard it, you know, in many spaces, very much so from someone called Francis Weller, who I, you know, take a lot of learning and inspiration from. And he talks about, you know, the personal development world in a sense being so ascension focused. We want to ascend, right? But the work is in the descent. In there, in the muck, right, is where we start to really see our edges and see our wounds and see the things, the depths of ourselves.
Well, that's another problem, because the personal development world then looks at consistently working on what they think they need to work on in like emotionality, past traumas. You should forget about all of that. I said, that's an endless look into a trillion-celled person that can go on forever. What I tell people, and even now working with people, it's like, forget about all of that. Go for something you want to create in your business, and along the road, you'll find your obstacles will show up naturally. Don't put obstacles in your way. Like most people that get into personal development aren't really running 7, 8, 9-figure businesses because you can't make money in ambiguity.
Can you explain that for us?
You can't make money in ambiguity. You can't make a long-term money because people can't trust it. It's better to go make a pen or a shirt or
something tangible.
Something tangible. If you track the top 8 wealthiest personal development people, the wealthiest one is only 9 million. The wealthiest is Tony Robbins, but he didn't make most of his money in personal development. He made it in his investments, 450 million. The ninth person is this black guy. Then it goes down through, but from Tony Robbins to the next guy is only 9 million. Then it's 5 million. Then it's 2 million. Then it's 1 million. Then it's 500,000. That's the top in the industry. That's not to most people that could sound like a lot, but that's capped. And these are the top of the top. So if the top of the top are making that, then everyone, and I know, like being in this industry for so long, a lot of people are broke. A lot of people don't have the cash that they're talking about. A lot of people are struggling because you can't really live long-term off giving ambiguity to people. Emotions are an ever-fluctuating occurrence in the human body. 1 minute you could be happy, next minute you could be sad. The second thing is people get addicted to personal development because they go in for the high. If I go in, I get a sugar high. I get another sugar high. Man, I feel great for 2 weeks. I feel it's great. But I always say to them, look at the depreciating amount of money that's happening to you for your good feeling. You might as well go to a theme park or eat a donut. I said the only way to measure whether you're really succeeding is the incremental profits that you gain from your business or your growth over time. You've got to track it. The baseline foundation for anything is the tracking of the growth of the numbers that you're producing in your business over time. Oh, I can't do that. Why? Because it makes them accountable not to ambiguity, but to practicality.
What about to someone who is, that's not their business, but they want to improve the communication and the connection in their relationship, let's say?
It's a subtle way of trying to make themselves better. I studied with a guy. I went to a guy, Wyatt Woodsmore, who was Tony Robbins' trainer. You can look in his book, Take the Giant. He's in the first page or something, thanks to Wyatt. So I said to Wyatt, who's the best trainer in the world? And he told me there's a guy named Marvin Oka who wrote M-Braining and a few other books. So I went and I studied with him for a while. Most fucked up guy I know. Best trainer in the world. Someone in Tony Robbins' group who's in his $200,000 group. I was like, oh, so what's he like behind the scenes? Oh, we had a good party the other night. There were stripper poles. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Wayne Dyer, I spent time with him and his family. His wife told me directly that he had a bachelor pad and for 10 years was taking lots of women there. I talked to his girlfriend when we went away and she was telling me the same thing. Louise Hay one night, and we were in Lords. She called me over. She wanted to fuck me. Let's go up to the room. That's to heal your life, lady. Brendan Bouchard, was a good friend of mine, number 2 in the industry. One night I was talking to a girl, slides up on me and says, you want to get with your boy? And I was like, shit, this isn't the Brendan Bouchard that I see on the internet. I could go on and on and on and on and on. Like, yeah, it's the industry needs an overhaul because it's producing people that are inauthentic about being who they are. A black guy, I coached a black guy from the States, trying not to be a black guy, trying to be a white guy. I was like, you're off right from the start. And so this guy now is on YouTube. He's big and he's famous, but every time I look at him, it's like, gross. I can't coach you anymore, bro. I don't care who you are, how big you are. You're trying to be something. I don't want to be a part of that.
So in your mind then, what does that look like for, coming down to the user, right? Your average dude, if I speak to my audience, your everyday man who is looking to work on, right, move out of some of his insecurities dominating his life.
The focus of it will grow it. The focus on it will grow it. When you put something in front of a man that's worth a challenge, he'll divert his energy to the challenge. When you focus, like a problem is a problem and that's the problem. When you focus in on that problem that you think needs to be solved, usually if you divert your energy into something else, that'll actually have them solve problems that are worth the challenges that they could be going for. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying, this is not for people that are in deep suffering, who are in deep depression. I'm not talking to those people. Deep depression, deep anxiety, violence, psychological breakdowns, mental health issues. This is not a conversation. If you're out there, you need help, real help. Don't go to personal development people. Go to a trained psychologist. Go to someone that's trained. This is not conversation for you. If you're in deep pain, agony, you need to get some help. Make sure you reach out, talk to somebody. I'm talking to the men that are up for things. Mm-hmm. If you focus in on the thing that you think you need to solve, usually it compounds the problem. That's the number one rule for when working with people I work with. Why are you consistently bringing forth the problem when if we put something in front of you that's worth your strength, your mana, it could disappear in a moment? So if someone's attached to that problem, they'll keep replaying and reinstigating the need to go back to it. I'm not interested in that anymore. I want to see people succeed. I want to, when I have a couple of programs, when people come into those programs, as soon as they seem to think that they need to tell me a problem that I should solve it. Right from the get-go, I'm not solving any of that. It's got nothing to do with what you're creating. You want to turn your business into a six-figure business in this amount of time. The problem that you're talking about is just going to grow something we don't even need to focus on. You need to go away in the next 2 weeks, run the numbers for me. I want a complete statistical analysis of your business baseline so we can build off of that. That's it. Then I'm going to teach you something that is used in governments. I'm going to teach you something that is used with entrepreneurs, a conversation for action. It's the number one thing that gets people causing results and profits to happen in their business. That's what I'm going to teach you. And then I'm going to, if you don't implement on that, I'm going to tell you you're wasting your money, because you should triple, quadruple, even 10 times that money if you follow a way to conversate to your next best actions in your business or whatever you wanted to create. Well, a problem with our men nowadays is there's no great challenge in front of them. There's comfort, there's family, there's wife, there's no challenge. And when you take a challenge away from a man, he'll focus on things that are not worth his time, energy, or money.
And so this is something I've heard you talk about, right? You seeing the rise of, at the very least, conversating about masculinity, the rise of men's groups. And I heard you talk about, to your experience, a lot of those groups are kind of teaching men to be women in a sense. I
hope I didn't say that. It's cold, bro. No.
We're safe here. Let's explore the conversation, because I think I know what you're talking to, but I'd love to discuss it. Because what I'm hearing was the extension of right? The challenge, the need for.
The guys, the men's groups are beautiful in the fact that they're trying to help men. You can't take that away from them. That's the best. The thing is, they're having men focus in on emotionality, which is a consistently untangible, fluctuating occurrence that happens in the human body. So when men focus on what women focus in on, they're not focused in on what they can produce for their own challenge. My thing is that men aren't challenged enough in areas that are going to grow them. And so it's nice to hug. I mean, it's lovely, do eye-to-eye connections, cry. But if, literally, if you get to this group of men and you track them over time, if they're going and hugging, crying, and then they're hugging, crying, and they're hugging and crying, they're hugging and crying, that's all it's about, what it's about. I want to see the mana in men come back, like the availability for men to be men. The alpha man, I feel, is starting to be usurped by this idea of men being so nice, lovely, and all of that. Mm-hmm. But there's a saying that says, when no one loves the warrior till the enemy's at the gate. And in Fight Club, Brad Pitt says, when he's talking to the guys underground, he says, there's no great challenges, there's no great war. There's nothing for us men. And the Fight Club movie is based on him trying to bring back that masculinity. And that's what I want to bring back. I want men to see me on my bike, my HQ holding I'm doing up, and reach out and say, "Cheer, bro, mean." But I also want them to see, that I'm a father and husband and I run business. We're putting on an event soon, and I did research around Kiwi millionaires, and it was that first article that came up said really hard to become a millionaire in New Zealand, and we hear it. Oh, I've heard it, and Kate's heard it quite often. Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking, who do I know that's 5 multi-millionaires? And I couldn't even list one. Oh no, I could list one. Mm-hmm. My mate here in Bali who owns. But even to get out of him, like how much you made, bro? 30 mil. And I was like, mean Māori? So you're one of the only Māori I know. So he owns shitloads of properties on the island, and he's expanding. He's got investors. And I said, why don't you let people know that you've done this? He said, I'm not sure. But it was just nice to hear that. The men's groups are wonderful. Like my mate Watene, who's from Hawke's Bay, he was working with a group of mongrel mob men in the Gold Coast. It was lovely.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think it's wonderful. Yet my personal vocation is to not let the alpha man die off.
And so, let's talk to that, please. Like for you, what therefore is this kind of, I'm going to use the term, like healthier expression of masculinity?
I can't define that. There's no definition for that. Mine is to just remind people to come back, because it becomes...
Back to what?
Back to, like, let's go back to the start of the conversation. Go back to the cultural roots from where a person comes from. Mm-hmm. If we go back to that, then there's a platform for men to be who they are. There's always... The question here, I think, is how do we solve the problems? This is not a problem. This is something to work towards, back to. I'm not trying to focus in on it. What I'm trying to do is, for myself, is make sure that as a father, I'm progressing. As a husband, I'm progressing. As a businessman, I'm progressing. So that I'm not like if I'm focusing in on emotionality and all of that, it's forever. It goes on and on and on. It's just a fluctuation of natural occurrences in the human body that changes and flows depending on different environmental conditions.
And what about for men who have a complete disconnection, let's say, to their emotionality? Is there still a relevance for that?
No, because the thing is that you're getting them to focus on something that's going to take, you're going to have to train them to go back and do something that is going to take a lot of time, energy, and money off of you. Like how many of these men's groups are making money for the guy that is standing at the front helping them?
Does it need to be about money?
It needs to be about something. Because Watene went into a deep depression for all the work that he was doing, and had to get men to bring him out of that.
And so
this guy that came to Bali, a beautiful black man, tall. I couldn't follow him. He hasn't been in a relationship. He's had no children. He speaks articulately, but he doesn't relate to the men. Another guy, Oprah's, one of her consultants came out here. He was an MBA, he had an MBA trainer with him. He had all these people with him. He's standing over me in the gym, 6'4", and he's telling me all this Tony Robbins stuff. I fucking front kicked him. I front kicked him across the gym. And I looked at the NBA guy, I looked at all of his people, and I said, what happens when the man does that? What are you going to do now with all your Tony Robbins bullshit?
And how'd that go?
Oh, he fell over, 6'4", but he was thinking he was the man.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't been, he had no wife. He hasn't been through having children. He hasn't worked 9 to 5. All he's done is created an online business that has grown marketingly and has got some credo of being on Oprah and being with Kim Kardashian and all that. I don't give a fuck. He thought that was going to influence me. And then he added all these wonderful fucking NLP ambiguity and words to it. And I fucking at the time I was getting depressed, so I fucking front kicked him across the gym. How are you going to deal with that type of man? He didn't know what to say. In that moment, he lost himself. And that's when I said to him, that's who you really are behind all those words. The next day, he invited me out to his house. He fucking chucked Snoop on, and we were bumping. He had a group of men show up, and we all played basketball, and it was fucking awesome because we weren't trying to coach and teach each other. I kicked their asses because I played professional basketball and I played for 15 years. They thought that even the NBA guy said, "You're a fucking trainer, you're not a player." Beat them, wiped the floor of them, and then we had a great laugh. We talked some banter. That was more fun than him standing over me and telling me how much the neuro-linguistics of my intentions weren't functioning well for me as a man.
Right. So there was this kind of intellectualization or something that was almost humbled by physical exertion, brotherhood, connection, and shared experience.
You want to see what a man's really like in your men's groups? Let him go nuts. See if you can handle that.
So can you talk us through, because I'm interested to explore this, right? You know, like you mentioned before, Watane working with, you know, the mob, a gang, for those people who don't know that. And then, you know, like you stepping into the space of choosing like essentially violence, right? To front kick someone.
Yeah.
So where is the place for that? How do we not rationalize, but for those who their only tool is violence, some ineffective, unhealthy, like adolescent reactivity. How do we navigate past and beyond that?
You can't. It's a biological 101 tool that's been ingrained for 14 billion years. You can't that's the problem. Everyone's trying to get over themselves, get through, solve something that they can't solve. You know, the biggest ego trip, Alan Watts said, is trying to get rid of your ego. The biggest ego trip is the ego tricking itself and thinking that it can get rid of itself by saying that it wants to get rid of itself. Alan Watts, for instance, was a drunken alcoholic, one of the most spiritual teachers at the time. His daughter said, "Dad, why do you drink so much?" And you know what he said?
What?
"It makes me a better man, darling." He was so drunk that they had to get a driver for him at the end. They had to drive him around. When he died, beautifully, someone walked past the room and he was lying there like a little kid, bouncing a balloon up in the air. And then he died of a heart attack. I can list off Krishnamurti, slept with his the 5 most spiritual men slept with his his best friend's wife for years. The daughter wrote a book recently about watching that happen. That was his best friend, Krishnamurti, the guy that said, "I do not have an ego." Well, you fucking have a penis, bro, because you're fucking your best friend's wife.
Okay, so there's no escaping our nature.
There's no escaping our nature.
Yeah.
If you put yourself into a position that you're trying to solve things with men, that's not profiting you, not meaning monetary wise, but it's not benefiting you in the long term, it's a waste of fucking time. These people are going to be who they are no matter what. That's their right to be there.
But surely someone, and let's look at a man who's got some like pretty fucked up experience and learn behaviors that see him then execute that aggression and against people, against himself.
Who is this man? You're talking about this, the ambiguity again. Who's the man you're talking about? Name him?
I don't have any people to name right now.
Yes, so the thing is, you're talking about a man that we don't even know is there.
Well, we can look at things like statistics.
Yeah, okay, so that's better. We can look at the statistics around there.
Yeah.
But I can look at it and think, well, those are some statistics. Then I go look at the people I'm helping in their business and I go, those are some statistics too. Which do I choose to put my energy into? See, a lot of men follow me. A lot of men reach out to me, but they don't reach out to me because I'm trying to tell them about how to live their lives. They reach out because I brought a bike for my missus. They reach out because I'm at the gym boxing. They reach out because they see me and my son playing basketball.
They're seeing who you're being.
They're not, I'm not telling them. Like, how often you look online and you see people telling people how to be? Don't tell me how to be. You can't be that yourself.
So one of the things that I'm hearing in this is
You said go anywhere, cuzzy.
Absolutely. This is it. So one of the things that I'm hearing through a lot of this is this word. I've heard you talk about it. I talk about it a lot as well. I reflect on it and spin around on it. And it's this word integrity.
Yeah.
Right. So can you kind of, I suppose let's just go there. Can you give us a bit of your idea? Like what the fuck is integrity?
Well, you go look in the dictionary. One of the definitions says to be whole, complete, and perfect. So integrity is an integer of part of something. So when somebody is doing anything, you always ask them, are you all there? Is the integrity of who you are all there? What do you mean? Well, if you're going to produce something, you need all of yourself there. Otherwise, we're only going to get part of you. Integrity, if you look at it, is the structure of how something works or doesn't work. So if you look at a bike and you go, well, this bike looks good. You start riding it and you all of a sudden notice that the tire's flat. The integrity of the bike is not working for what its purpose is because it's got a flat tire. So how do we map that onto human behavior? This is practical. When a person is wanting to create something, we look at the integrity of what they're saying. Is it got flat tireness in it, or is it structurally sound? Now, this is different than like personal development. You literally look into the structure of what somebody's saying about what they're creating, and you distinguish for them, is that working in the way that the bike works for them in their languaging? And then you go to work on what's not working for them. That then doesn't bring an obstacle that shouldn't be there, like emotionality, all that shit. It brings forth what's actually there for them that potentially is in the way as it shows up. Obstacles with integrity should show up unexpectedly so that you can solve them and grow yourself. When you're bringing things that you know as obstacles into your path, what you're doing is just putting a shit pile in front of yourself. So with integrity, this is an ontological idea with integrity. You look up the dictionary, it says one of the definitions to be whole, complete, and perfect, meaning that nothing is missing. So you take that to a person, and when you talk to them about what they're creating, you find out what's working or not working. If it's not working, there's an integrity issue there structurally in the way that they're speaking about what they're wanting to create. You then have to language back to them that so that they can see that it's not working. And a lot of the times the mind defends itself, so it doesn't want to admit to it not working. But when they start to see that and get impacted by that, they have a chance to really produce higher levels of performance and results. Now, where did I learn this from? A guy named Steve Zaffron, who worked with NASA, Reebok, NZ Steel. He worked inside of their businesses using this model to produce higher levels of results for these billion-dollar companies. He was my mentor for a while. And so then I replicated that in businesses, smaller businesses, and started seeing results. Just finished a program. 99% of the people, 93% of the people, 94% quadrupled their income in 3 months because of the application of looking at what's not workable at the area of integrity structurally and what they were doing.
And so I'm interested in, I might be leading you nowhere here, but this is an itch I got to scratch. So for those people, let's say, do you see some of their personal shit come up in that? Or is that part of the integrity leaks, let's call it, that you're kind of speaking to?
So, no, we don't look at their personal...
Not looking for it, but does it pop up in there? Like, oh shit, there's I don't know, a limitation, a block, whatever.
No, because I don't... I'll try to reword this a little bit so we don't look at that. We'll try to reword it so we don't look at it. So what you're saying, yes, it does happen. Exactly how you're saying. Something will pop up. But I get them to see that it's not a personal trait that should be put in the way. It's something that's just not working for the performance that they're wanting to produce going forward. The reason why I don't do that is because if they find what's wrong, they'll make it even more wrong, enhancing the obstacle and restricting the performance and profits that they can make.
Yep, so the focus on it, it expands.
It expands. So I'm reluctant to go there at first until they produce some type of results. If the results aren't coming through, then we put them into an integrity conversation, asking them what's missing from their performance. What it does is it takes out the personalized addiction and need to find out what's wrong with oneself. Integrity isn't a moral issue. It isn't a right or wrong thing. It's a thing that holds the structure of what's occurring for somebody or what's happening for them. It takes the focus away from putting obstacles in the way and puts the focus on, if an obstacle does show up along the way, which it will, then we look at the unworkability of it rather than what's wrong with it. When people are addicted, really addicted to making themselves wrong because it gives them a neurological high. So when a person feels wrong, there's actually a release of epinephrine, I think, and oxytocin. It literally spikes in them to give them a natural high. That's why when you go to a woman and you're like, oh, your husband beat you up. Why did you go back to him? It's not that he beat her up. It's their after effect when they make up. It creates a biological binding in a person to be attached not to the beating, but to the after effect, the pleasure after the beating. It's the same thing with an obstacle. People think, oh, I need to look for an obstacle. I need to look for something. What's wrong? But what it does is it creates a neurological attachment to it, which causes them to get less results and circulate around a problem that's not really a problem. When you work with people over time and you really get them to practice this, they're taken aback by it. Like, I thought this was something real for me. Well, there's no real result in it, and that's an occurrence of the natural negative biases that we have in us. So let's not focus on it because it's going to happen no matter what. You've already made $5,000, $10,000, you made $50,000, that's fantastic. Notice that we made it without focusing on the things that you thought we needed to focus in on and focus on the practicalities of the statistics, having conversations, contacting people, basic stuff. It's too simple, Henare. Of course, everything that is worth doing well, you got to know it simply.
So it's coming back to the wholeness, right, in terms of the structure.
Yeah, I'm very reluctant nowadays to use words like that. But yeah, the dictionary says, you know, the integrity is about being bringing the completeness of something back to itself. Like if a bike's got a flat tire, to make it completely a good bike again, you got to pump the tire up.
Yeah.
If a chain is broken on a bike, to make the chain be a complete bike for its job, to make it work, you've got to make the chain work. With a human being, if they're saying they want to create a business that's profitable, and then they're talking about emotionality all the time, that emotionality is the chain that's broken, potentially in what they're saying, that's not getting them to focus on the completeness. So you get them to get off that, and the workability comes back and they can produce higher levels of results. Now, this is based on a lot of science too. We want people to be impacted neurologically so that they, not just to get an insight. Insights have a neurological rating of 1 or 2. Being impacted by seeing something that wasn't seen before has a neurological rating of about 7, 8, 9. That then offsets. That's why personal development doesn't work, because the neurological offsets are so low. If you get an insight, it's like, oh, that was nice. If you get impacted, you're like, oh my God, and it changes the neurology of how a person relates to what they're producing in their life. That's why personal development doesn't work so well, because the neurological impacts are always at the insight level, the happy feeling level.
Mm-hmm.
If you can go beyond that, the impacts are at a different level.
And so can I attempt to bastardize that a little bit, and feel free to jump in, that
bastardize, what a word.
Insight needs impact, i.e. it needs to be implemented and put into action for a greater shift on some level.
Unless you see someone produce an action out of the insight, which usually doesn't happen. Like you see people come out of personal development courses and they do nothing. Unless you see
they got the high, right, as you're talking about.
The high, which is fine. I mean, if someone comes to me and says, I want to do personal development, go for it. Go, have fun. Don't expect, though, to make millions of dollars in that, doing it, or to, run a successful business, because you'll get more off the high than the work, because the work is grindy. It's not always great.
And something that I want to, I suppose, revisit a little bit before we wrap is kind of coming back to men, right? And there's this term I heard you talk about, I think, in one of your own podcasts, which was seeing a lot of princes wanting to, or essentially like trying to be kings, right? Younger dudes who haven't yet like been through shit, passing themselves off as, or convincing themselves that they are, the leaders of men in a sense.
Yeah, it's way off. It's what's happened with this. Like, young people have come out with great marketing skills, but they haven't come out with great experiences. And so when you go, like I live in Bali, and there's a lot of these groups here, but they're just marketing it to men that are in that same fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go into these things. These men aren't up to anything. They're not making difference in their families. They're all single or so. Yeah. A prince.
So then, can I ask? Do you see the importance? Maybe sorry, Wago.
A prince has to earn his kingdom. Like my son, 14 years old, he's always challenging me, and I let him have a lot of it. I always tell him it's not your time. Like he says, Dad, I'm so good at basketball. Yeah, he's good, but son, you didn't play 15 years professionally. Like I'm helping you along to get you better. But and then he like, oh, I'm tough. Like, son, you weren't born in Flaxman. You didn't go through what I went through. You're a soft, lovely boy. You got to earn that. And so my job now is to grow him into a king. But at points where he thinks he is the king, I have to tell him, sorry, son, it's not the way. You don't pay the bills. You leave these lights on at night. You ain't paying the electricity, boy. But it's done with more. That's only done on a when it's needed. It's more working with him collaboratively, talking to him, respecting him.
Yeah, almost an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of going through what a prince needs to go through.
Yeah. So there's the group of guys I was involved in here. Very popular. They've got all the credentials, but when I hung out with them, they weren't gangster. Meaning they had no idea. They had no idea how to hang out with real men. They didn't have an idea. Yeah, if you look on them online, fucking big YouTube's audiences, and one of them, it was like my daughter was sitting there, and he was a sexual predator.
Right.
She started getting really uncomfortable around him, and I thought, this cunt's got problems. So never hung out with him again. Yet I won't say his name. Online, he portrays this image of whatever he portrays as bullshit. So,
because I personally, I see the immense power, I suppose, in community, right, and brotherhood. But what I'm hearing there is there's I don't know, something missing almost beyond some integrity and not being a fucking sleazeball. Honestly, what is it that these princes are needing?
They're needing to be like the guy I front kicked was 26 at the time. He's telling a 40-year-old man how to live his life. That's the problem. we got these people that haven't had experiences recommending to other people that they should live a life they haven't lived themselves. I'm not taking advice from a 24-year-old, unless he's great at CrossFit, or he's great at, or unless he's got a degree in aerodynamics. I'm going to listen to that motherfucker because he has proven that he's done. I'm going to listen to Justin Bieber about music because he's done it.
He's become masterful, not necessarily a master, but in something, and it's about that thing.
If you hold on a sec, bro, you're telling me that you're a relationship expert. You've never been in a relationship. You haven't got a degree through university in relational things. You haven't got a PhD. I'm listening to John Gray because he's got a PhD. He's written 2 books in relationship stuff, and he's proven. I'm not listening to you, bro, because the last missus you only had for 3 months. Stop talking to me about relationships. I've been married 18. I've been with my wife 18 years. You don't have a clue. Now, if you're a professional basketballer, tell me about that. Shit, fuck, that sounds cool. But don't tell me about relationship stuff. You don't have a clue.
So thank you for that. So then I want to ask, to the dudes listening to this, right, who are in that age bracket, let's call it, stage of life, right? They're princes, they're building, but they are potentially looking like, how do I get to that next stage? What do you think that they do? What's the
It's too attractive out there to be something else. These quick fix ideas, like you see it on YouTube, you can make $1 million in 3 weeks if you do the strategy. It's too attractive out there. I would tell them to go be like my daughter, who's now in a very successful business. She's moving into it legitimately. This year will move into a 6-figure business after being in business 1 year, because she's honest with her skills. She does podcast growth. She helps build websites, and she does one other thing. When I see her, I can rely on her doing that because she's telling the truth. And because she's doing that, she's building a long-term, she's just 19.
And so when you also say the truth there, are you also meaning that she tells the truth as to her level and where she's at and what she's capable of? She's
telling the truth to the level of skills that she has. And she's producing results for people that then produce more results. And there's no residual. When you start lying about what you do, it builds up a residual background of untruthfulness. And that's when you see these personal development people start to get crackly smiles, or they become very defensive. They become very defensive. You can tell when a personal development person, because they can't be with that other side of it. My daughter, I'm so proud of her. She's truthful and honest to the skills that she has. And by doing that, she's built up her business over time. And even she was on a call with me yesterday, and she was telling me, this is how you do your podcast. I'm listening to her because that's what she does. You need to get rid of this. You need to do this. And I said, okay, I'll do that. What's happening out there is people are not being honest, and they're being given quick ideas around how to be successful fast. And it's too attractive. It's like seeing a beautiful woman walk through the room and you got a wife. You just got to look.
You don't chase it.
Depending on what type of man you are, yeah, of course.
Brother, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your insights. What are you currently up to in the world? Where can people find you? Any final thoughts? No, just thanks for the chat today. It's been good to have a chat with you about this. They don't need to find me. They've got you. Don't know how to take that one. No, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And I see like my mind's going like, oh, there's a lead, and we can take that tangent. I'd love to take a lot of those tangents. And I'm really connected into, this conversation around culture as well. Being back here in New Zealand, I haven't really lived here for fucking ever. I'm 39, I essentially left in 2005, I think. But it's something connected to me, right? It's dear. And so I'm very interested to explore it. But also the thing I see, and now I'm extending the conversation, is, like I'm white, but it's not a white culture, right? It's the individuality of me. And that's what I'm getting in this is like, for the person listening, the invitation is to get back to self. And where are your roots, right? That almost grounds us.
Yeah, you're intelligent, articulate man that, when put that into practical use, can go anywhere.
Thank you. I shall receive that. Henare O'Brien, thank you so much for joining us, you bloody legend.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, with your partners, and in your world. If you have got something from this podcast, please share it with someone that you think could benefit from it. And please visit your home for podcasts. Like us, subscribe to us, leave us a review. Your feedback is phenomenal in getting this in front of more eyes and ears. Until next time, I'm Mike Campbell, and remember to build that legendary integrity.